Good morning. I am Dr. NAGAMANIAMMai, Professor, Head of the Department of Food Processing Technology. Now I am going to discuss about bread making process. I am going to cover the following topics. Introduction to bread, selection of ingredients, role of ingredients, process flowchart for bread making, and types of bread as well as quality attributes of bread. When we think about bread, it is a staple food in Middle East, Central Asia, Africa, Europe, America and Australia. The consumption of bread consumption in India as well as Southeast Asian countries are very meager. It is considered to be a staple food because of its richness in carbohydrates, proteins and other minor nutrients like magnesium, iron, selenium, B vitamins and dietary fiber. Other than its nutrient significance, it also have a cultural bonding with specific religions. It is considered to be one of the food in Christianity along with wine, bread and wine. Other than its cultural and nutritional importance, bread is one of the yeast leavened products. Here leavening is the process where the process will incorporate air bubbles into the products. In case of bread making, yeast is the one which will produce carbon dioxide from the flour, whereby the carbon dioxide will be incorporated in the bread during various processing steps, and which in turn will increase the softness of bread. The major ingredients used in bread making is wheat flour, refined wheat flour. Other than that, there are other ingredients also used for bread making, such as yeast, water, sugar, salt, fat, etc. There are different types of breads: whole wheat bread, multigrain bread, rye flour bread as well as fruit bread. In the previous slide, I told about the major ingredient is refined wheat flour. Depending upon the flour, which flour is being used for bread making makes the difference in types of bread. If you are using whole wheat bread, it is whole wheat flour as an ingredient for bread making. It is considered as whole wheat bread. Multigrain flours can also be added along with refined wheat flour, whereby which will be termed as multigrain bread. Rye flour as well as fruit bread. Fruit bread is a specific bread type in which, along with the flour, dry fruits as well as fresh fruits or fruit pulps could be added as one of the ingredients. So different types of breads are whole wheat bread, multigrain bread, rye flour bread, fruit bread, along with refined wheat flour bread, that is general bread. These are all the ingredients. The major ingredient is flour. Flour could be of any thing which has been told already. Refined wheat flour, whole wheat flour, multigrain flour, rye flour, etc. Then yeast. Yeast is the next major ingredient in bread making, which will act on the flour and produce carbon dioxide by fermentation reaction. Next to flour and yeast, the next ingredient is sugar. Sugar is being used in minimal quantity, which will also act as a food for yeast, in turn which will influence the flavor and the color of bread. Fat. Fat could be either hydrogenated fat or butter. In commercial production, hydrogenated fats are being used. It could be used to increase the malleability or softness of bread, as well as which will give the shiny appearance. Salt. Salt will act as a flavor enhancer, also will act as a food for yeast, and which will control the rate of fermentation during fermentation reaction, that is rate of yeast activity during fermentation reaction. Next one is about water. Water is another one ingredient. In general, we need to go for plain water. It is not recommended to use mineral water, or that is purified water, like without any minerals. If you are using purified water, we need to change the formulation by adding other minerals in order to meet the nutritional demand requirement for yeast growth. These are the last three are optional ingredients. Last three ingredients are optional ingredients: egg, milk and dairy products, additives or improvers. Additives or improvers are generally used in commercial bread production in order to enhance its quality attributes like color, softness, texture, flavor. Milk and egg are optional ingredients which could be used in specific type of bread. Next is about process flow chart for bread making. The first step in bread making is selection of raw material. As I told in the previous slide, major raw materials are refined wheat flour, yeast, water, fat, sugar and salt. The first step is selection of ingredients, then preparation of ingredients. Raw materials means it includes selection of ingredients as well as preparation of ingredients. Preparation of ingredients are like the flour needs to be cleaned or sifted, whereby unwanted materials or inedible portions could be removed. Then yeast needs to be made as a ferment, flying ferment. If you are using dry yeast as an ingredient, which needs to be added with 1/3 of formulation water with pinch of flour and small quantity of salt and sugar, and which after stirring, which needs to be kept aside, whereby this yeast will grow for during that period, whereby the flying ferment will be ready for production. In general, flying ferment production happen for around 10 to 15 minutes. Once flying ferment is ready, we need to add, that is addition of water containing yeast. We need to knead or mix this flying ferment along with other ingredients. Here, kneading or mixing in general takes place for 20 minutes. Here, order of addition of ingredients are very important. In general, addition of fat need to be done at end of the mixing process in order to obtain proper dough development. First, the remaining flour needs to be added. Along with flour, the water containing yeast, that is the flying ferment, need to be added. Then the continuous mixing needs to be given. Mixing or kneading could be done by dough kneader, where the bowl will be rotating, will be fixed, and the spindle will rotate. The speed of the spindle needs to be adjusted in such a way that the mixing takes place properly. There are different stages of mixing. The initial stage is called as pickup stage. In that, all the ingredients will be collected together and mixed together. Then drying up stage. During drying up stage, all the ingredients will mix together and it will become a sticky mass. That is called as drying up stage. Then the final mixing stage, where it is also called as cleaning up stage, where all the ingredients will be mixed together, whereby the dough will not stick on the bowl of the dough kneader or dough mixture. That is called as drying up cleaning up stage. This diagram shows a schematic diagram. Here mixing. Once mixing is completed, which will move to divider. Divider will divide dough into equal uniform portion of cylinders. The dough divider will work like the dough where from the feed hopper there will be blades. The speed of the feed will be adjusted as well as there is a piston. The piston is attached with the blade. The piston speed will be adjusted in such a way that the dough which is coming out of this feed hopper will be cut into equal size cylinders. Then this will move to a rounder whereby the cylindrical shape dough will be made as a round ball. The ball shape will be obtained. Then which will move to a proofing section. Proofing is nothing but fermentation. During proofing, the time proofing time in general is for about 1 hour. During this proofing time, there will be various reactions takes place in the dough. 1 hour at 25 to 28 degrees Celsius with 70 to 75% relative humidity. Here, temperature and relative humidity are very important and essential thing which needs to be maintained in order to obtain proper yeast growth and fermentation. So, once initial proofing is completed, the dough will be turned ups and down. That is called as knock back. Knock back. Knock back is the process during proofing which needs to be done in order to distribute heat uniformly in the dough, whereby we can achieve proper fermentation, dough development as well as carbon dioxide production during proofing. The next process is intermediate proofing after knockback. Next process is intermediate proofing which needs to be done for 30 minutes. Again, the ups and down turned dough will be developed properly. After that, the dough needs to be placed in pans or molds. The pans or molds needs to be greased, either greased with oil or dusted with flour in order to remove baked bread easily from mold. Once pans are ready with greasing or powdering, the dough needs to be placed, the round balls needs to be placed in the mold. In general, molding needs to be done. Here you could see the shape, the space in there should be only 1/3 of the mold will be filled with dough. The rest will be left for carbon dioxide production, that is volume rise during next stage of proofing. So once the dough is filled in the mold, this will be moved to next stage of proofing, that is final proofing, which will take around 35 minutes. During this period, there will be dough development in the mold. The dough will develop up to 2/3 of its volume of the mold. Then the next process is baking. After proofing, the molds needs to be arranged in the oven in such a manner that there will be equal heat distribution during baking process. The temperature is generally oven temperature should be around 225 degrees Celsius and the baking needs to be done for 30 to 35 minutes. During this period, the heat distribution should be from all the sides and it should be distributed, heat to be distributed uniformly. Then placing of molds or tray plays major role, whereby there should not be any uneven heat distribution. If there is any uneven heat distribution, that will hinder the baking process and crust and crumb development. Once baking is over, the pans needs to be depanned. That is, the pan will be, mold will be turned ups and down, whereby which will be depanned. After depanning, which will go through a cooler, where the temperature of the bread needs to be reduced up to 35 to 40 degrees Celsius before slicing. If temperature of the breads are not reduced properly, which may affect the slicing process and further packing process. During slicing, if temperature is not reduced properly, there will be grind development in the loaves. At the same time, after packing, there may be possibility of sweating of the bread inside the packs, which leads to mold growth. So the temperature needs to be reduced to 35 to 40 degrees Celsius before slicing. After slicing, the loaves needs to be packed in bags and it is ready for dispatch. This is a very basic the chemistry, the chemical reactions happens in the bread during various stages of bread making. The first stage of bread making is, as we discussed, mixing, that is kneading. In the kneading process, already I told that wheat flour is the source of carbohydrates, proteins and vitamins. Here, in the case of mixing, the flour will be mixed with water and salt. When water and salt mixed with the flour, there will be continuous mixing, which in turn will improve the dough development. Dough development is nothing but the gluten development. What is gluten? Gluten is a wheat protein. The wheat protein, there are two types of proteins present in wheat. One is soluble protein and another one is insoluble protein. For gluten development, insoluble proteins plays major role. Glutamine and gliadin, these are all insoluble proteins. These insoluble proteins, when we mix flour with water, these insoluble proteins will combine together with water and form a network. We could see a small line in between the strands. So this network formation is called as gluten development. Gluten is an insoluble protein which has the capability to expand. It is called as viscoelastic property, which will expand. This expansion takes place during fermentation or proofing period. The carbon dioxide which is being produced by yeast activity will be entrapped in between the gluten molecules, that is in between the strands, whereby there is an increase rising in volume of bread. So the next activity is about starch and sugar. Starch is from wheat flour. When the starch is acted by enzyme, that is the enzyme produced by yeast, the starch will be converted to glucose. Glucose in turn will be converted by enzymes, yeast enzymes, to carbon dioxide and ethanol. Carbon dioxide is the one which will be trapped in between the gluten molecules, and the ethanol is the one which is responsible for the flavor of bread. Then next one is about, this is very important, the starch will be acted by amylase enzyme. This amylase enzyme will convert starch into maltose. Maltose in turn will be converted as glucose molecules by maltase enzyme. Glucose will combine with other sugar, whereby will be acted by yeast enzyme zymase and will produce carbon dioxide and ethanol. These are all the major chemical changes or reactions takes place during bread making. Okay, once bread is being made or mixed together, mixed as a dough, and it has been followed by fermentation or proofing period, the next stage will be baking. Here the other ingredients, fat, already I told, it gives the softness and shiny appearance. Then about sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate could be added as a enhancer, which also used to produce carbon dioxide by reacting with water and flour. This is by water and heat. So in major places, baking soda or sodium bicarbonate can't be used in bread making, but it has a wide application in other bakery products. This is about the overall chemical reactions takes place during kneading and proofing process. Next one is about baking. During baking, there are crust and crumb development. Crust is the outer layer of the bread. The hard brown layer of the bread is called as crust. The soft spongy inner layer is called as crumb. The structure of crust as well as crumb depending upon the process like kneading and proofing. If the proofing period or improper fermentation happens, the crust development will be improper, as well as crumb development. If it is over fermented, the crust become darker in color, even turns to black, as well as the crumb structure won't be uniform. The sponge size and shape will be ununiform. So the good bread quality is determined by crust color and crumb structure. The crust color should be brown and the crumb should be uniform shaped holes in the loaves. Other than there are the bread could be even prepared by many methods. The first method is called as straight dough method. Straight dough method is nothing but mixing all the ingredients together and kneading continuously, whereby the dough will be developed. Further, which will follow to dividing, molding, proofing, then baking, whereby we are obtaining bread. It is called as straight dough method. Next method is salt delayed method. Salt delayed method is the one where the salt content in the bread will be, formulation will be increased in order to reduce or delay fermentation time. That is, in order to delay the yeast activity. So if the dough needs to be transported from one place to another place for baking, during that period they will adopt this method. This is also very common in European countries, that there will be a set of dough making unit present at one location. Then bakery will be available in another location, whereby the dough will be prepared by the salt delayed method by adding more amount of salt. In general, 1.5 times higher than the required level of salt in the formulation. That is called as salt delayed method, whereby the fermentation will be delayed and it could be transferred to bakery on time during fermentation, and it could be baked immediately. That is called as salt delayed method. Next one is no downtime method. In case of no downtime method, generally during emergency they will go for this no downtime method. In no downtime method, the dough will be previous lot dough will be added as a starter, whereby the rate of fermentation will be rapid and we could achieve the fermentation and good bread structure, and the quality of good will be improved by adding starter culture, that is previous lot dough with a fresh one, whereby the fermentation time will be reduced. This method could be used during emergency period. Then sponge and dough method. In sponge and dough method, the sponge will be prepared. That is, the mixing of dough takes place in two stages. First mixing is sponge preparation. Second one is dough preparation. Then mixing the sponge and dough together. What is sponge? Sponge is the one where part of flour, water and 100% yeast in the formulation will be mixed together as a mass, and it will be kept aside for fermentation. That mass is called as sponge. Sponge is with maida or wheat flour with water, part of water and 100% yeast in the formulation together, mixed together and which is ready for fermentation. That is mixing and it is left for fermentation. Next one is dough. The remaining ingredients, remaining part of maida, salt, sugar, water will be mixed together and dough will be prepared. Once this dough is ready, the sponge will be added with the dough and it will be mixed together, whereby the mixing time as well as fermentation time will be reduced. That is sponge and dough method. Once dough is ready, once both the sponge and dough being mixed together, then it will go to the next steps like dividing, molding, proofing, panning, then baking, cooling, slicing and packing. Then fermented dough method. Fermented dough method is generally adopted for preparing sweet bread. Ferment is the one which will be having more sugar and milk. Milk and milk products could be added along with yeast and part of maida, same like sponge. Here other ingredients like the sugar content will be more then dairy products, milk or milk powder will be added and it will be mixed together and the ferment will be kept for fermentation. In the same way, the remaining ingredients like dough, other than sugar, dough, water, salt will be mixed together and dough will be ready. The ferment which contain part of flour, water, sugar, milk and dairy products are ready for mixing. Then the ferment and dough will be mixed together. Then further processing like dividing, molding, proofing, baking, slicing, cooling, slicing and packing will happen. This is how ferment and dough method is adopted for bread making. These are all about different methods of bread making. Thank you.